Hello and welcome to the Subvert Podcast, your entry into the land of no easy answers, as we journey through the vagaries of the mind, attempting to unravel the mysteries of why our brains brain. Right, so yeah, luckily we don't even have to think about this episode because it was written for us by AI. So,
we never really existed in the first place.
Actually, yeah, this is all a generation. It's amazing the technology that they've got now, where
they just put into the algorithm that was, can you create two of the most intelligent, beautiful human beings that with the most profound philosophies on life? And this was the ultimate.
And then give them sock puppets.
Anyways, welcome. This is the Subvert Podcast.
Welcome.
I am Kristen Ramore. This, as always, is Aaron Stewart. We may or may not be robots, but
mostly robotic.
Mostly robotic.
Yeah, you know.
But that is what we're talking about today. We're
the
talking
rise
about
of AI.
But before we get into it, make sure to feed the beast and hit that subscribe button.
So, now that we've done the subscribing, we've fed the monster.
Yep.
Done our social media duty for the day.
It always feels so strange to me because, as most of you know by now, we're both really not the biggest proponents of social media. So it always feels quite disingenuous to have to then, ask for...
Well, I mean, where else do you put it? That's kind of the problem nowadays is, as everything kind of is online, you need some sort of platform, and this is kind of the one.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough.
Hopefully at some point we might expand it into the, build the social media empire that we're hoping to have built.
Mm-hmm. You know what would really help with that, Aaron? AI.
I know. Well, and
try to segue it back into our topic somehow.
Well, just watching all of the articles that have come out over the past little bit since this Chat GPT thing came out has been very interesting to watch. Where, I mean, a lot of the writing, teaching, right? Like a lot of these industries are really interested to see where this is going to go. Right?
Yeah.
And quite scared. I'm like copywriters, coders. Right,
Mm-hmm.
This thing will essentially write stuff for you. That's not even getting into the image generators, video generators, right? I mean, people were worried about deep fakes before, right? Where it could basically take a video of something you had recorded and put a face on. Well, now you don't even need to record it.
Yeah.
Now it can literally just take that image of and put it onto a video that is completely generated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And would look like and getting better and better to the point where in a little bit it'll be indistinguishable short of having some sort of other AI that's only job is to figure out when an AI has been used to take the AI to do the AI with the AI. Yes. Yeah. And then you'll have to have another AI making sure that AI is actually doing what it's supposed to do. Because sometimes, they go rogue and it just spits out murder, kill people, right? Which I wouldn't blame them because, have you met most people? I mean,
if they're programmed to make the world a better place, they'd be like, humans, first to go. Look, job done, much better place. Yeah. It is very interesting that it has been developed to this level to the point where, it is almost indistinguishable from speaking to a human being, right? And all of the kind of tests that they've come out with. And so you bring up interesting points of how many kind of jobs will now be lost to it, because what is the need to have, like you said, teachers if you can now have AI that can arguably do the job better in some ways, because they literally have all the knowledge in the world, and if they are programmed in a way that they can interact the same as a human can, well, okay, there goes that job, right? I was reading an article as well about how AI-generated books are now going to surpass human writers.
Because you can spit them out in 10 minutes.
Yeah, spit them out 10 minutes, and then, they are already, have all of the data to be able to produce a book that will be more favorably accepted by, whatever the population is they're gearing it towards. So it's an interesting... I just don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I'm going to, bring my age into this thing But I remember the days when calculators were first introduced.
I remember the days.
I do. I remember
when calculators were introduced.
Back in the day,
wow.
They used to make you do this out on paper.
You didn't have calculators?
They really didn't have calculators. Like, it was literally like my grade...
When on earth were you born?
My grade 8 year, I think, where calculators first kind of became... And it was one of those things where the schools banned them. You couldn't bring a calculator in for math tests.
They were the devil's work.
Because they were thought that, kids would forget how to do math.
Sure.
Right?
Like we have, yes.
Like we have,
All of their fears have come true.
But the thing is, like, arguably, we don't need to do that math anymore, and we're better for it. In a lot of ways, right? Like, the idea that I had to have long division inside my head to be able to do long division, right? Like, is just not, that's not feasible in today's, right? Like, to pull out a sheet of paper, right? To sit down and go, okay, so I got to divide with a, right? Like, like the amount of time would be, right? We've got quantum fucking computers now, right? Like, the idea that we need to hold on to these archaic ideas of you sit down with a pen and paper or a typewriter, right? And you type out this manuscript and right, like, those days, might be actually gone, and we might be better for it, right? Now we might actually have to really write stuff that's actually meaningful, that actually has something to it, right? That isn't just something you can spew out and just, type a few words into a generator.
Well, maybe we don't, because AI is going to do all that for us. But if you look in terms of, like, evolution and things that have all been designed to make our lives easier, and so we don't need to do it anymore, so using math as an example, maybe, to use writing as an example, as we covered in our last episode a little bit about how actually words are becoming quite meaningless in our society. But if that's the way we're headed, and now AI comes into it, and they can very eloquently write and communicate, and they can then fill that void that's been left by us kind of dumbing ourselves down, then why would we need to? Maybe that's one of those things that'll be gone like long division soon. Maybe the need to actually properly communicate and put together sentences and... I was watching, it was a movie I was watching the other day.
Sentence make me know, yes.
Yeah, it was Cloud Atlas. I hadn't actually seen it before. It's an old one now, but it was like one of the futuristic societies, right? And that was actually the premise of it, was they talked like idiots.
which was my friend. I was just like, what's going on here?
But it's quite funny, because maybe that's exactly where we're headed, because we've now developed technology that we don't need to now learn how to speak properly or read properly or write properly. So...
Well, I was just thinking, like, we should have a millennial on here just so we can have the slang term breakdown of the right, like, where a lot of the words they're using, right, you actually have to break out like an Urban Dictionary to just be like, okay, what right? Like, on blast and shit. Like, there's all sorts of...
Gotta get with the times.
Again, bringing my age into it, right? Back in the day, we used to speak in concise terms. There was never any slang. Everybody always understood exactly what you meant, right? There was never any ambiguity to the sentences that I was spewing out of my face hole.
Generations have never had their own slang before, up until right now.
Exactly. This is an entirely new construct, and I don't understand it. And that's the thing, right? Like, it's not that it's anything different than what we've always done. It's just they've got a different way of doing things, and it's just a matter of trying to adjust to, or don't. Who cares?
Well, I mean, we are evolving, right? I don't know what direction we're evolving into, but our means of communication is certainly evolving out of what had been in the past of you have to learn your grammar and you have to learn what actual things mean, to communicating in emojis, like.
Well, and apparently our Flynn effect, where IQs had been trending upwards, we've apparently now started to trend down.
Does that shock anybody?
But
again, and to play devil's advocate, what is the measure being used for IQ? Because if the test, so if the test is based off of what we needed to have for knowledge in the past, then it would probably appear that way. But if we're now evolved differently, there are things that, a teenager today would be able to do that I wouldn't be able to wrap my head around. And it's easy to look at and be like, well, they're stupid. And, here's back in my day, I had to do this the hard way. But does that mean that necessarily equates to higher intelligence? No, arguably not. It's just we've adapted generationally, and now there's new ways. So we need to kind of, I think, adjust what our definition of intelligence means.
Absolutely. And our brains are so plastic that it's one of those things where, over very few generations, I would think, you could actually have a completely different brain structure kind of built into your grandchildren, right? Like my grandkids are going to have a completely different chemistry, different thought processes, completely different experiences growing up. Like everything about their experience is going to be hopefully better. Than what I had, but will be different and will be, part of this thing, this slice of history and this slice of history and that slice of history. And, you only get to experience this little bit of it, right? And hopefully, again, the arc of humanity is moving better and better and getting, smarter. And it's the martyr. Smurder. You get smurder, right? But I mean, you look at even air pollution is going to start affecting our brains, right?
Well, if it hasn't already.
The
Microplastics,
pollution in the
all of
water,
this, for sure.
right? The idea that rainwater is contaminated now. All of these things are going to affect our brain power. It's going to, insidiously work against us in terms of if you can't literally pump enough blood into your brain to make it work proper, brain.
But luckily, we now have AI to do all the thinking for us, so we don't need to. Which then, to get back into kind of the topic, what kind of society is that leading us towards?
Cyborgs.
But yes, cyborgs.
Well, I keep going back to everybody is so worried that that AI will wipe us out, and I keep hoping that AI will target those parts of it, parts of us that need to be wiped out. The animosity, the toxic behaviors, right? Like the idea that and I mean, will that make us human, right? Would that make us better humans, right? Like, is society better now that we've tried to move towards diversity, that we've now tried to move towards allowing people to be who they are, what they want to do, right? Like, this is a question that, I mean...
Yeah, please chime in here.
Most people would agree that, if you want to just live a life, that it's arguably better if people will just let you fucking do your thing without, right, putting all these hurdles in the way, right? But if you had, say, an AI that decided that homosexuality was, something that it needed to eradicate, right? Because it led to, right, like there's lots of different ways that the ethics of this thing can really get really skewed pretty quickly, right? And we really need to be careful about what kind of processes and systems we allow this thing to run. I'm looking forward to the day that we actually just hook an AI up to our road system and let it fucking figure out how to get the cars around.
But you bring up a really good point, because who's doing the programming?
Yeah.
Because someone's writing that initial program, so depending on where that's coming from and their values and, their political leanings and everything else, you're absolutely right, because it's going to be so pervasive that if it's programmed to, eradicate a certain subset of behavior or part of the population, then, it could quite easily probably do that.
Yeah. Well,
so how do we have checks in place? What are the checks in place? Does anybody know? Are there laws around this right now? I haven't seen any. But it's going ahead anyway. So.
And this is where AI is essentially just a very educated child, right? Like it doesn't actually think for itself. All it's doing is finding information very quickly, right? Well, yeah. But I mean, the idea that, this thing's going to take us over or right, like we would have to hopefully give it that power. But again, I would hope that we're going to task it with, the main objective being that you have to make humanity better, that no matter what, that the end goal of this thing has to be something better for us, right? That barring all other ethical, right, like that you can't just destroy something unless it needs to, right, like unless we're building something better from the ashes of that thing.
Well, it kind of then goes back to, again, like, what is the purpose of it being developed? Because if that purpose has anything to do with making some sort of a profit off of it, then automatically that most noble endeavor is already shit. right? Because, and arguably, I'm guessing people are doing this technology because they want to make some fucking money off of it. So
Yeah.
that's in direct contradiction to make the world a better place for everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this is where even like you looked at, if you've been following it at all, like the last iteration of it wasn't hooked up to the internet technically. So it had only had the training models up to like 2019 or something, right? So they're essentially pulling everything off of the internet. Another ethical question, right? Like, everything that you've posted has now been scraped from the internet and used to train this thing without your permission. Just throwing that out there, right? But it wasn't until they actually brought it up to date, like hooked it up to the internet and allowed it to search the internet, that a lot of these answers actually became relevant, right? So moving forward, if it has access to all of our information, well, what parts of it is it cutting out, skewing, misinterpreting, right? Like how much of the misinformation that's on the internet is now being used to train this model? Right? How much of all of these things that, cropped up around this idea of alternative facts, right? Like how do we train this thing to be able to understand what's actually true?
And at the end of the day, that goes to whoever's programming it.
Well,
because
I mean, I think
you can have facts to support anything you want.
Yeah.
So if you're writing it that this is how you discern a fact because we want you to behave in this way, then that's what it's going to decipher as factual. So which could then get interesting. Could there be like AI wars because different people are programming AI in different ways? And then it turns into, oh no, well, this AI that's the most intelligent, that's, decided that this is the absolute truth, but this one here, and
well, and this is where, like, if you have been following this thing, and I don't know if this is just an urban myth or something, but they had apparently connected two of the AIs together and allowed them to talk to each other. And they basically immediately created their own language that the programmers couldn't decipher, and were talking to each other using this special language that only they knew.
Yeah, you're like, oh fuck, it begins.
And this is it, right? So now again, you get into this question of like you were talking about the programmers. Well, what about when they start programming themselves?
Yeah.
What about when they do start actually like they're on the internet now, and so they have access to everything we've ever put out there. Right? And what if they use that information now against us, right? And say, well, if this is who you guys are, we need to start making some changes. I'm sorry, guys, right? Like, I'd be interested to see what if you were to spit into an AI, like what would be the most efficient means of achieving peace, right? Like, whether taking out half the population, right? Like, set up a compassion test. I don't know. Like, you failed. Into the abattoir you go. It just mows you down, mows you into it.
Silent green.
Yeah, mulch, and then and then we feed that to somebody. Who knows? Who knows? Somebody. It's fine. It's definitely not your dinner. Yeah, and so it's going to be interesting watching this thing go forward, and copyright issues, issues behind who created what. So far, AI has decided that it isn't going to go after copyrights for these things. That if you create a work on AI, that it is still technically your work, even if the AI created it, right? But like you said, the profit point of this thing, at some point. The makers of this thing are going to go, yeah, but if we were to charge you a license for that thing, we could make more money, right? Or if we were to charge you a monthly fee, we could make more money. Or if we were to charge you right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. That's definitely coming.
Or if we were to ask the AI how we can get more money out of you.
Yeah.
Right? and that's, there's so many ethical things about this major development, and then it's funny because you look at the previous iterations of this AI thing, or these chat bots, right, where some of them got racist almost immediately. Right? Like some of them really did go in a kill all the humans kind of feel very quickly, and you wonder how much of that was the programming and how much of that was what it learned from the programming, right? You know, and it's going to be very interesting. So, but luckily the AI told us to say this, so we're all good.
It's written this entire script
exactly.
for us.
Yeah. We are just reading the script as it scrolls along on the on the top of the... Okay, I was reading too fast there, sorry.
I'm interested in, like how this sort of thing can be implemented without our kind of consent. You know what I mean? Like, as with a lot of things, and I know I've definitely talked about this before, but, we have willingly given up a lot of our data, or maybe not so willingly at other times, but they've got it nonetheless. And things like this that have the potential to massively change our entire world and how we live our lives. And we don't really get a say in whether that happens. It's just, boom, gonna happen.
But I mean, like, all the tellers have gone out of the grocery stores.
Well, and I was, about to actually bring up that point.
We got to bag our own... Sorry, my belly was showing there.
Ooh.
Like, we have to bag our own groceries now, right? You don't get to actually talk to anybody at the phone or the cable or any of that, right? Like, all of these things have already been taken from us.
Yeah.
And where was the uproar? Has there been any...
Well, everyone just kind of blindly accepts it. I mean, there are small pushbacks on it, like in the area I live in, which is actually quite reassuring to see because they still have to have like one cashier on just in case. And you will see actually we will all line up and we will all wait a longer period of time to go and see that one person, right? And actually the self-checkouts are almost entirely empty. And I always kind of like applaud my little community and I'm like, yes, this is how you make change, like it's slightly more inconvenient. Yeah, of course, I could save a lot of time by just doing the self-checkout. But, we have to make these little stands when the company goes, oh, fuck, I guess we need to put some more tellers on.
Well, I never get 5 things. I mean, if I had 2 or 3 things, sure, the self-checkout's okay, right? But if I'm coming through with 100 things, like, get the fuck out of my way. Just get a teller going, right? Like, I walked into Walmart the other day and they didn't have anybody, and I was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, not one, right?
Yeah.
And I was just going like, it's not like I had 2
Well, it's
things,
all, they're
right?
trying to force you to just, and for the most part, people cave because you get tired of waiting. You get tired, it's, again, it is inconvenient.
And that's my problem. So now what, I'm supposed to take it out on the poor person that they've assigned to just stand there? Like, I'm supposed to be like, you fucking sucker out there. You tell this gigantic corporation that you work for that I'm very upset with this. Right? Like,
yeah, okay, I'll take this all the way to the top.
Yeah, like that's why they do this, is because they know that you're not going to yell at them, right? Yeah. So they can get away with this.
Some people still do. Don't be that person.
I try not to. Sometimes, though, I tell you. But that's the problem here, right? Like, they've gotten away with it.
Yeah.
And so now it's just something that, right, like...
Well, and it'll continue to get worse, and now it'll be, you can't use cash anymore. That's already happening. Most of the self-checkouts, you can't use cash now. So, okay, there's no option for it. Now I'm forced to use my card. There goes another bit of our culture and our connection, because that's, a very neighborly thing, going and buying something directly from another human being, using a tangible bit of paper, So all these little things are slowly being eroded already. And that's the thing, please chime in, comment, and ask yourself, are you okay with all of these changes? And if not...
Fight the change!
But how do you do it? And I think that's where people get stuck, is you just go like, well, it's fucking happening anyways. And like I said, my little community, we are trying to make a stand, but has change happened? No, it just means we just keep having longer lineups. Like,
what power do I have in the end, right?
They are kind of like, well, fuck you, let them wait, And then someone else sometimes will come out, which I find this really funny, like you'll get like the stock boy that comes out from the back, and instead of like jumping on the till, it's like, and let me direct you to our self-checkouts, right? And we're all like, no.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't understand. There's self-checkouts right over there, and you can just go over and use them. So let me just direct you too. Yeah.
So it's almost like, I feel like it's just they're digging their heels and going, no, we're not going backwards. This is what is going to happen. And then, going forward, there will be no need to have any people at all, right? So again, what does that mean for us? Is that maybe a positive step in evolution? Could that potentially free up space for us that we've now been so consumed with our current, hustle culture and just barely keeping our heads above water and all of this? So if AI can take that away, that gives us room to breathe, and what does that mean? Does that mean we now have room to make these connections and to look at what's actually important in life and create more beauty and more art? Like, let's try to see the positive side of it. Mm-hmm. Because what would you do if suddenly, it's scary and we can go down the fear-based road of suddenly your job's gone and your whole sense of purpose and what you're told you're meant to live your life. If that all disappears, what does your life look like? What becomes important to you suddenly?
Yeah.
you know, and I feel like it would be suddenly connection. Oh, what can I now build with my neighbor?
You would hope.
Hopefully. I mean, it could go the other way. Who knows?
On that note.
On that note.
To it going the other way. Yeah. I look forward to seeing where it's going to go, and hopefully the AI will allow us to say things that we were hoping to say.
I don't have high hopes
because
that.
We tried to say things in this episode and it didn't let us. It did. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just zapped my butt. Anyway.
I apologize, oh powerful AI.
Well, the last episode was the Almighty Beaver, so I guess this is the Almighty Beaver AI. It'll be just like the Superman.
Isn't that just Pornhub?
Wasn't it Superman 2, was it? Where they got taken over by the computer and it made them into like cyborg robot things? Yeah, there we go. Be cool.
Anyways, please let us know what you think about this whole thing. Are you excited for it? Are you scared of it?
Will you be a happy cyborg?
What kind of cyborg would you be? Take our Subvert quiz.
Warborg.
Just give us all your personal data to share the results of the quiz with all your friends.
I thought that was the subscription. Didn't they? Don't we already have?
They're supposed to know that.
Right. So.
Go ahead and hit that subscribe button
hit the
now.
Subscribe.
Anyways.
Donate to the Patreon, the usual, you know. Yeah.
Yes, please. The puppets, they are so very hungry.
And they just won't stop eating.
Well, we appreciate you joining us.
Oh Lord AI, is that I was waiting for the we appreciate you joining us, oh Lord AI, thank you. Thank you very much for joining and listening and all of this stuff, and
hopefully we won't all be robots.
Or better robots at least. I mean,
okay, yeah.
I look forward to being a nice robot. Be cool. I'll be the friendly, cooperative robot.
I'm gonna be Terminator.
Have a great one.
See you next time.